Pack 14. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the January 14, 2019 legislative session of the Salisbury City Council to order. I would ask that each of you please silence any electronic devices, buzzers, beepers, phones, whatever that makes noise. If you need to take a phone call or make a phone call, we ask that you do it outside of the chamber. If for some reason during the meeting an emergency should arise, please exit in an orderly manner through the door, make a right-hand turn, and go down the stairs. If for some reason that exit is blocked, make a left-hand turn and then a right-hand turn and go down the stairs. Should you need assistance, please ask and we'll be happy to provide it to you. And please do not use the elevators if there is an emergency. At this time, I'd like to call on Kristen Wall-Love, the Director of Adult Spiritual Formation and Membership of the Asbury United Methodist Church, for our invocation. Good evening, Kristen.
Good evening, friends. Please pray with me. Eternal God, thank you for your presence here with us tonight. Open our hearts and minds to your direction, that we may continually keep the welfare of all people in our city in mind as discussions are had and decisions are made. Allow us to keep love, your love, the center of all that we do and all that we are, so that we may help bring about your kingdom here on earth as it is on heaven. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Kristen. At this time, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. We have some presentations.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, yes, I do. Good evening. Thank you for forwarding me this time. I appreciate it. So the first thing I have this evening is actually a presentation that I want to make, but I want to make on behalf of both myself and the council to a special person who has given so much, accomplished so much, and we want to acknowledge and recognize a particular accomplishment this evening. We're kind of blessed, the council in particular and the city at large is blessed by the fact that we have the best city clerk and assistant city clerk that the city has, that any city could ask for in the state of Maryland. And it's true, it's very true. And one of the things that professional clerks who, as we teach our mayors for the day all the time as they come in, our little mayor for the day guests come in and they experience, variety of departments. But one of the things that they see is they always go and meet Miss Diane, and then they meet Miss Kim. And Diane always gives them a Maryland Clerks Association pin and talks to them a little bit about the importance of what a city clerk does. And if you don't know, our city clerks are responsible really for maintaining the history and also the process of the adoption of and tracking of legislation that's adopted by our city council. And so we appreciate them, but they've got their own way of acknowledging expertise, and it's not just by certificates or by gratitude expressed at a council meeting. So this event this evening is to recognize Diane Carter, who is the newest Master Municipal Clerk. And she has been designated a Master Municipal Clerk by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks through their Master Municipal Clerk Academy program. By achieving this milestone, she joins an elite group of 1,373 Master Municipal Clerks around the world, not just in the U.S. She's one of 11 active municipal clerks in the state of Maryland to have earned this prestigious designation. She's served as Assistant City Clerk here in the city of Salisbury for 6 years, possessing dedication and diligence, setting her apart as a model for other master municipal clerks. Jack Heath, Council President Jack Heath has said that hallmarks of her position are evidenced by her sincerity, her expertise, and her accuracy. And Mr. President, you offered your congratulations as well in the press announcement that we put out. Ms. Carter's been a member of the IIMC since November 2008, and in addition to her Master Municipal Clerk designation, she earned the Certified Municipal Clerk designation back in December 2011. So I'd like to ask Ms. Diane if you would come forward.
Mr. Mayor, before you do
Yes.
the second, I just have to say, you did leave out the most important responsibility.
Of course I did.
For both the clerk and the assistant clerk, and that's to keep me out of trouble. And for the last 4+ years, so far, so good. Keep up the good work. That's all I can say.
So the next series of certificates that I have are for several partners that the city of Salisbury has had. As many of you likely know, the city of Salisbury is the only city with fewer than 250,000 people in the United States who has a housing first program that has a permanent supportive housing to end chronic homelessness. This was a program initiated following discussions with all of the homeless service agencies around the region and a conversation with them where ultimately we got down to the nitty-gritty and we said, what is the one thing that's not happening that needs to happen to resolve homelessness in our region? And the answer was permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing is just what it sounds like. It's permanent, meaning you're making a lifetime commitment to the individuals that are being housed, and it's supportive, meaning it's not just housing, it's housing first. And after that, it's wraparound services, case management through a partnership with the Wicomico Health Department. But we can't do this alone. It's not as if the city of Salisbury is sitting on, we're not in the business of owning housing, we're not in the business of developing property and being the purveyors of housing, so we have private sector partners that have helped us accomplish this mission. I'd like to invite, if I can, if you all wouldn't mind coming forward, Everett Howard, the Director of Housing and Community Development, and Christine Chestnut, who is our Housing and Homelessness Manager, to come forward to help me with these certificates. And first, before I go any further, anything you two would like to add?
I just want to add that we have been doing this now just about 29 months, and so we have one individual who's remained in housing that entire 29 months. We have a couple more that have reached the 24-month mark, a couple more that are almost there, and so it's just something that I recognize that we were not doing was recognizing the landlords, and we could not do this without them. Obviously, we can't house people unless we have a place to house them. So we have a good amount of landlords in the city that have been willing to work with us and partner with us, and even when the clients can be very, very difficult, they are often people that most landlords, if they saw their application, would throw it in the garbage and not even look at them. They have, just not great rental history, sometimes criminal history, but with the partnership that they've developed with us, we've had some of these people in housing for a really long time, and that's great. So we greatly appreciate that, and we just want to give some recognition for that.
On behalf of City of Salisbury and the Housing and Community Development Department, I just want to say thank you to the landlords that are participating in this. Without you guys, like the mayor said, this program doesn't happen. I also want to thank the mayor and the council for being proactive and essentially taking this problem on. Like I said, we're one of the few municipalities out there with a program like this, and it does make a difference. And Christine has the passion for it, and she makes everything go really, really well. So I'll keep that short because it's going to be
Last couple things I want to add is that this would be an easy thing to do if it were, say, oh, let's go pursue a grant and then let's make it happen, right? But grant funding, as we all know, is not permanent. And what the council did was said, we're going to make a commitment to doing this for the long term, our money first. This is the sort of thing that if we're going to make a commitment to somebody's shelter, it's got to be a permanent thing, and it's got to come from our dollars first, our coffers first. And that's an important thing. The second thing is that about 2 years ago, or 29 months ago, when we started this process, there were approximately 100 people on the lower 3 counties that were considered chronically homeless. So 100 people that had, for over a year, no shelter. They were living in the woods, living wherever, and 31 individuals have been helped by this program. So a significant endeavor, no doubt, but for significant impact and significant benefit. So, if I can, if there's a representative in the room of each of these organizations, as I call your name, first I'm going to read the language, and then I'm going to call you up one by one. The City of Salisbury would like to acknowledge the following entities for your partnership with the Housing First program. Your willingness to collaborate with the city is changing the lives of the most vulnerable members of our community. We truly appreciate your ongoing collaboration and commitment to Housing First, and commend you for recognizing how important it is to address homelessness in and around our city. So, would representative of Delmarva Management Group come forward? Anybody from Delmarva Management Group? Let me hand these to you. Sorry. Okay. Salisbury Commons, Chelsea Court Apartments, Long and Foster Property Management. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, as you come up, would you mind walking around behind the council? We're going to get a picture with everybody. River's Edge Apartments. Okay. AKB Rentals. Eric Davis Rental Properties. Wisner Real Estate. Get a picture. And Gateway Village.
Gateway.
Good looking group.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the legislative agenda as presented.
Second.
Mr. Ireton, Ms. Jackson. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll give that to Ms. Jackson and Mr. Ireton.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Nichols. How are you?
Fine, thank you. On the consent agenda tonight, we have resolution number 2896, approving the appointment of Scott Rall to the Friends of Poplar Hill Mansion Board of Directors for term ending January 2022. Resolution number 2897, approving the reappointment of Dr. Morris Naguaba to the Building Board of Adjustments and Appeals for term ending January 2024. Resolution number 2898, approving the appointment of Anthony Sarbanes to the Ethics Commission for term ending January 2023. Resolution number 2899, approving the appointment of Ludell Inslee to the Friends of Poplar Hill Mansion Board of Directors for term ending January 2022. Resolution number 2900, approving the appointment of Dr. Harry Basehart to the Elections Board for term ending January 2023. Resolution number 2901, approving the appointment of Michael Auer to the Sustainability Advisory Committee for term ending January 2022. Resolution number 2902, declaring that Delmarva Veterans Builders is eligible to receive enterprise zone benefits for property located at 212 West Main Street in Salisbury. There are 4 manufacturing exemption requests this evening. The first is from Clearcom Technologies LLC for their equipment purchased in 2017, and over the next 5 years, they will benefit from this exemption by a total savings of $627. The next manufacturing exemption request is from Pepsi Bottling Ventures LLC for their equipment purchased in 2017. Over the next 5 years, they'll benefit from this exemption by a total savings of $9,183. The third manufacturing exemption request is from TriPro Technologies, Inc. for their equipment purchased in 2016. Over the next 5 years, they'll benefit by a total savings of $126. And the fourth request is from TriPro Technologies for equipment purchased in 2017, and they'll benefit over the next 5 years by $2,184. And that's it for the consent agenda.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Thank you.
And the chair votes aye. At this time, if Scott Rall, Dr. Maurice Nguaba, Tony Sarbanes, Ludell Inslee, Dr. Harry Basehart, and Michael Auger, if they're here, please stand and be acknowledged. We want to thank you very much for your volunteering. If we don't have citizens to get involved, we'd be in rough shape, and we appreciate everyone who has worked so hard and continues to work hard. This evening, we have 3 public hearings, and at this time, before we get to the hearings, anyone that's interested in commenting for any of those public hearings, you have to be sworn in by the city clerk. So if you'd rise, please, now, and be sworn in.
If you'll raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
And just as a heads up, so you can prepare, the way that we do this is we will call for comments, and each individual will have 4 minutes to come to say what they want. And we would ask that if someone else is going to repeat the same thing, they just say they're in support of the individual that came before them for the sake of time. Okay? Thank you very much. At this time, I'll call for a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2855.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boda, Ms. Jackson. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. And, no, I'll tell you, at this time, Julia will read the resolution first. I apologize.
Sure. Good evening, Council. Resolution number 2855, a resolution of the City of Salisbury proposing the annexation to the City of Salisbury of certain area of land contiguous to and binding upon the northerly corporate limits of the City of Salisbury to be known as the Route 13 North Pentex 2 property annexation, beginning for the same at the point on the corporate limit, said point lying on the easterly right-of-way line of US Route 13, Salisbury Boulevard, hence by and with northerly line of land PTV LLC.
All right. At this time, will anybody that wants to speak? Please come up and state your name.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Heath, and members of the City Council. My name is Philip LaBelle. I'm a resident of Mallard Drive in Chestnut Hill on Leonard Mill Pond, which is just across from the Tourist Center. I come to the City Council as an outsider because I'm technically not a resident of the city, but this is an interesting juncture which we are contemplating at this point. I represent 5 neighborhood associations on Leonard Mill Pond: Chestnut Hill, Pine Knoll 1, Pine Knoll 2, Danwood, and Holly Estates. We have a loose organization that collaborates with the county with regard to maintaining the health and the quality of the pond, including chemical treatment that has taken place over the years. I come to you tonight, and I'll speak as briefly as I can, with the understanding of what's taking place or what's being proposed for the Pentex development of that parcel of land. I don't stand here in opposition to it. I stand here with concerns that have been evinced, and I have spoken along with others with the director of this, Mr. William Owen, who I think will probably also want to speak this evening. Let me just summarize our concerns. Our concerns are that the plan that we have seen and which has been shared with us and was shared with you, I believe, at your December meeting, involves the implementation of 2 restaurants, one high-end, one low-end, and what that would involve is an expansion of the area now occupied primarily by what is still Exit Realty and the former Berica demonstration home location. And in that process, in order to provide adequate space for parking for those restaurants, there's been an ongoing discussion about how much traffic would be taking place there. So let me summarize my concerns, and I'm going to defer to some detail with another one of our neighborhood representatives, Steve Brewer. The concerns are this: it's with the removal of what may be as much as 80% of the tree coverage there, we are concerned about the level, prospective level of light pollution, noise pollution, and also congestion, traffic congestion. We have been assured that there would be collaboration on this, trying to satisfy those concerns. When we had a first understanding meeting with Mr. Owen and his group, we saw a general outline of the plan, and I think that's the one that was submitted to you. And I think moving forward on it was contingent upon your approval of the annexation plan. So we were really not in a position to offer a lot of technical insights or comments at that point because we didn't know, other than seeing the design on paper, how it was going to work out. So I'm going to let Steve address the question about the trees and the noise and the congestion on that side. I'll just briefly say that I am concerned about the amount of traffic in addition to the noise and light pollution that may come across the pond. We have one of our residents here, a number of residents here who have shown up, but they haven't all volunteered to speak regarding this proposal, but they do have concerns about how that will affect the quality of life on the pond, which has been a fairly quiet residential community up until now. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaBelle.
Mr. Mayor and Mr. President and council members, I appreciate the opportunity to come tonight and speak a few words. 4 minutes is not much time, so I'm giving you a packet of information here. I am not going to read that to you. I'm going to make comment on some of the things, but you will have there some detail of and reference points that you can go back to during your deliberations and look at. You know, one of the things, and I guess I just get right to the heart of the issue that I see, and that is, I'm not a developer. Mr. Owen and Pentex Ventures, they're developers, and they do a good job of it. The Aldi's property is a good example. And I'm not here to try to railroad or change what they're doing in terms of their business. But what I am here to do, because I have no part in that business. I'm not a developer or any of those things. But I am a citizen, and what I am here to do is to stress to the council something that has become very important to all of us, and that is fidelity to process. I can't make the decision. I can't add to or take away from the development plans. That's beyond my purview. But I can stress the importance of due diligence and fidelity to the process. And you might say, why? Well, the reason is that 10 years from now, none of us want to open our eyes and say, gosh, I wish I hadn't missed that. Now is the time that you pay attention to details. I'm going to raise some issues, and I took an oath. I'm going to tell you what I think. I can't tell you because I'm not in your deliberations. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the details of what's already transpired. But I'm going to raise some just thoughts that go through my mind that I think there needs to be resolution to. Perhaps there already is, and if there is, wonderful. If there's not, please consider them. I looked at the Planning and Zoning Commission report that was issued at the beginning of the process. And there are a number of references that show parcel 215, which is not one of the two parcels that fronts Route 13, which are commercial. There's a house on that parcel that was built in 1965. There's been a number of residents in it. I'm most certain at one point it was definitely residential. If you look at the tax records, when the person that owned it sold it recently to Pentex, the use was listed as residential, and the use on the tax assessment form that you can look at on maryland.gov real property search shows that it is still residential use. I'm not sure what all the ramifications of that are, but there is a section in the statute that talks about density change, and there's a 50% number attributed to that, along with a 5-year rule. It may not apply. I don't know. That's beyond what I know as a citizen. But it raises enough question as to why the commission thinks that it is residential, the county thinks that it is commercial, and maybe there's room for that because they are two different governing bodies. But in the city's comprehensive plan, and I have some map references for you all to look at later, in the city comprehensive plan, all of that tract of land for future growth use is labeled light residential. There needs to be a reconciliation between those two. It's my understanding that the Planning and Zoning Commission works for both county and city. Then I, as a citizen, when I go online and I look at some of these maps, particularly if we're going back to 2010, I would hope that in some of those cases there would be some continuity since it's the same 7 people working both sides. Now, the only reason I'm saying all this is it raises questions. Those are the kinds of questions that I believe need to be answered before we go forward with this. I'll just say one more thing. I had a number of things, and council, if you want, when you read through this, if you have any questions, my phone number is on the back. Please call me. I will make myself available to you. But Philip said one thing a while ago that I just need to throw out here before I sit down. When it comes to the 2 restaurants, I love to eat. It's apparent. I like good food. But when you look at the 2 restaurants, and one is a fast food with a drive-through, I would say to you this: all drive-throughs aren't the same. When drive-throughs began years ago, there was very limited inside space. It was drive-through. It was quick, in and out. Today, I would say to you that there are variations on that. I live down the street from Chick-fil-A, which I frequent quite often. Chick-fil-A has a substantial sit-down clientele at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as well as a substantial long line in the drive-through. That really goes to what Philip was talking about. When you come out of that facility that's being planned onto Route 13, 100 yards or so to the left is Aldi's at the end of Dykesboro Road. Just north of that is Phillips neighborhood trying to get out. And in order to get, at peak times, all of that traffic out, they have to get out through one egress point on 213, and people are going to try to get into the left merge lane because they have to turn left immediately past that bridge. It's dangerous. Now, I'm not saying it can't be fixed, But those kinds of issues, and there are a lot of them listed in here, and I'd be glad to address them with you when you have more time. But those kinds of issues
You're going
need
to have
to be
to
addressed.
wrap up because I cut you a
Yeah,
little slack.
I'm going to stop right there.
Okay.
Please feel free, though, because there are other things in there that I think need to be addressed. And this fidelity to due process is really important for all of us.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
I'll be very brief.
Could you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Connie Rue. My husband John and I live on Leonard's Mill Pond. We have for the past 5 years. And I just wanted to make a statement, a very brief statement, that I hope that, and I urge all the parties involved in this to take into full consideration the fragile ecosystem of that pond. I'm considering the flora and fauna, of course, also the quality of the water that could be compromised because of runoff, could also be compromised because of paper trash, plastic trash, and things like that, that would impact the otters, the herons, the turtles, the bass. The bass fishing there is quite good. We have a lot of activity there. It's one of the last spots in the North County for that sort of activity. And I would just urge due diligence on everyone's part to make sure that they have looked into the environmental impact of this project.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. And I'll call the vote on resolution number 2855. All those in favor of resolution 2855, please signify, sorry.
May I ask,
Yeah.
when can we ask questions of staff on any of the changes that may have?
Yeah, I think there's because there's multiple items,
Right.
I think it's probably better before any vote to have those conversations now, Mr. President,
Okay.
if we can. And we can bring staff up if you want. I can answer some of the things that Mr. Brewer brought up as well, if you're okay with that.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, just a couple thoughts, just things that I heard as a former, where's Mr. Brewer? Mr. Brewer, just as a former member of the Planning Commission myself, I can speak to some of these things and, in my current role and as a former council member too. The reason for the difference in county and city comprehensive plans, although they largely align in terms of their goals, objectives, and uses, is ultimately, it's not a product of a planning commission, it's a product of the political body. And so if the city council and the county council have different visions, they're allowed to, and they can disagree. That being said, I think the zoning designation under the current zoning classifications of that area are all trending toward commercial. And I would expect that that county zoning trending commercial it matches the uses, as even those houses have become commercial use over time. Additionally, with respect to density, yeah, that only references the housing density, not sort of density of activity in terms of commercial use. There are other things that govern, parking density and floor area ratio, but we don't have restrictions on that specific to density of allowable use, related to annexation or anything like that. The other thing that I would note is that that transition that's been happening for the last 30 years or so in that area, one of the things in terms of the change in use classification, so from residential to commercial, that's one of the things that in the next evolution of our documents, our zoning regulations and our comprehensive plan, you'll probably see us do away with. where there won't be reference to commercial or residential, but it'll be largely form-based. So it'll be about what it looks like, what it feels like, what the relationship to the street is, things like that, and it won't even have a reference to residential, commercial, et cetera, and would allow multiple different uses adjacent to one another in the same district, but would govern rather the form of the building and the performance of the building in terms of its impacts on the site, impacts on the pond nearby, its ecological impacts, its impact on traffic, things like that. So while it's not totally an outmoded way of thinking, that use-based zoning and use-based classification, it's getting that way. It's getting to be an outmoded way of describing what may or may not happen on a piece of property. The other thing I would say is, the question, I guess, before the council tonight is one of annexation. But any proposed development on those parcels is subject to significant process after this. And so dividing those two things is going to be critical tonight into two steps, and understanding what the implications and where the appropriate place for us being the city to require certain outcomes, although we should get those cemented tonight. But requiring those outcomes, I believe, are mostly going to be legally allowed through the planning approval process, site planning process, permitting, development, comprehensive development plan process, et cetera, not through the annexation process. But you're doing the right thing saying what you want right now, and that's certainly for the council to consider tonight. And it sounds to me also, like, if I understand the concerns, they mostly relate to the change in character and the impacts they're going to have to the north, primarily. There are also concerns that were brought up about traffic and things like that, but I'm confident that traffic planning and the engineering process and the approval process will be rigorous. What I'm less sure of, and what I'm more interested in, and I think what can be considered tonight especially, is what are the implications from a environmental standpoint, buffer, site design, site layout, trees, grasses, ecological buffer, runoff planning, and some security, some commitments to addressing those things now, which I think incidentally will also have some impact, Mr. LaBelle, on the questions about light pollution and noise pollution. Yeah, all of those things I think can be addressed through that planning process. But even though those will be determined through planning commission decisions and council decisions about permits and approvals.
Approvals of the final plan.
Yeah, and all of that. I think what you could do tonight is integrate step by step by step, point by point by point, what you wanted addressed tonight. And I think, I don't know if staff would be prepared to get into detail this evening. Probably, possibly. I'm looking at Ann, she's smiling. But at the very least, we could say, let's articulate what we want addressed, and ensure that we get that in writing and documented so that it could be addressed through whatever appropriate step it can be in the planning process, in the permitting process.
Mr. Mayor,
Where'd that come from?
if I can make one.
I gotta defer to the council president.
One question, you can come up and, because it's hard, because we need to record everything, so just take a couple minutes. That's it.
I only did 1 minute, but
That, you got it.
because I want to commend the council and the mayor's office on your comprehensive plan. And based on what you were just saying, one of the places in your comprehensive plan that fits exactly into what you're talking about is Chapter 4, including the goal. So I would suggest, and it talks about the Paleo Channel and a lot of the other issues you just mentioned, Chapter 4 of your comprehensive plan would be a good place to start.
Mr. President, would it be appropriate to, since this was submitted, to accept this as in with the resolution as evidence for whatever goes forward.
Yeah, we can do that, can't we?
Should I make an amendment?
Kim,
Make it part of the
Make it part of the minutes.
To
Yeah.
include as
Yeah,
always, being
Should I
an
make that
attachment
as-
to the
as
minutes of
a-
this meeting.
Should I make that as an amendment, or just, would that
We
be
can
appropriate?
Just ensure that,
It goes
It
with
gets
it.
in.
and we can,
So I'd like to make an amendment to accept the talking points from, is it Mr. Brewer? Yes. From Mr. Brewer,
Just submitting them into the record.
Submitting them into
Put them in the
record.
record. That's fine. I don't know if we need an amendment to that. We'll just order it to be that way. So
Mr.
they'll be in the,
Boda
they'll be in the
requested
minutes.
they
While everything was going on, I was taking notes on the general topics, and I think I've captured most of them. And each of those, by the way, I do sit on the planning commission, and each of those will have to be addressed in detail before any approvals are given. And if and I just was making notes, and I haven't seen this yet, so once I read this, we can always add to those notes. But the major ones that I saw were trees, effect on the environment, noise pollution, traffic, and I think that I think the mayor answered the one about the residential versus commercial piece. But there are going to be a lot of discussions relative to each of these topics when the final plan comes out. Essentially, right now, we're getting ready to get to a position where the development of the final plan will then have to be submitted, and we'll discuss these points at the planning commission. And then it's got to come back to us again on the council. So there are opportunities for us to address those issues, and we will.
I've been up there a couple times now, once in the snow, and I thought to myself, you woke up one day and you got a grocery store within 700 feet of you, but as we know, it giveth and it taketh away, and here this comes next to it. I'm not non-confident or unconfident, but lots of times we get stuff built in our city that after we see it, we go, who allowed them to build that way? And without a change in the standard of what you have to build, this is our only chance, because this is actually going to go out of our hands and go into another group's hands. And that's a whole different discussion with us, but are we having a discussion about, and I hate saying low end and high end because that's all a matter of taste. Could the low end, is the low end the one in the front near the highway?
What's the definition of?
Highway.
I'm struggling with, what is the definition of low end?
I don't know. It was
So
used
I'm
earlier.
not sure how to answer the question. I would say that.
The drive-through is in the front, correct? In the front building.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the,
So my question, looking at this map and traveling up there, is there a way that we can connect somehow? I know we're connecting with the one in Aldi in the back. I just went up there and brainstormed, but the problem is that I don't get to brainstorm. Some other commission's gonna get that, and then they're gonna come back to me and ask me to approve it. I don't like that. I think it should be the other way around. I think we should be in here hammering it out with you, saying, this entrance has to be here, this entrance has to hook up maybe with the front of Aldi. Does the restaurant in the front have to go all the way to the south of the property? Then it puts parking spaces on waterfront, which causes the mayor and I to have heart palpitations. Is there a way that something can be built in terms of a walkway? Is there any way to take what the residents and the recreation people are doing in the area and connect it somehow to this one? Is there a living shoreline, which isn't the prettiest thing in the world, but it does work in terms of runoff and trying to catch nutrients as they're coming off of those surfaces? So when I sent out the email after we got the original thing, it was like, hey, could somebody talk to us about the trees at least? Certainly, you have a major highway that's right next to a residential area, and there's noise there now. So more noise because of something that is a natural appendage to that traffic on that road. I don't know whether or not, especially after being the one who drew that line around the city and saying that's what has to go there because it can't go anywhere else. My question to you is, are we looking at the shoreline? Are we looking at things that we can do? Are we looking at truck traffic when people come to deliver to the restaurants? Are we looking at truck traffic when it's time to empty the trash barrels? Because it's the wonderful people who live in the development across the street that when the tractor company about 1,000 feet down the road, when they get their dumpsters dumped, my phone rings at my house and they say they're dumping them again at, an hour that is unacceptable for that particular over 55 community to be awake and to hear that noise. So I don't want to see a repeat of what we did there and not think about those particular issues. And then
If I could just
where does
stop
all
you.
that,
Well, let me-
where's all that going to happen?
Okay. First of all, Ms. Roan sits on the plan, comes in and is part of the planning commission as well now. I'm there. You're invited to come as well and sit, because I think we have to separate two things. This particular thing we're talking about is the annexation piece of it. What you're concerned with are the things that we're going to be doing in the next phase of this. And I would recommend that if the mayor doesn't have any issues, to give a list of your particular concerns, and then they can be addressed before it gets to the planning commission. And then you can come to the planning commission, as Mr. Rudisil did with the items when we're talking about the Merritt Mill, which I think is perfectly fine and should be done. So that would be my recommendation, because this piece has nothing to do with the final plan.
I don't know. I would disagree solely because the gentleman said it was the fidelity that I owed it to. And what happens is the decisions get made before. I want to get to a point where I can vote for it when it comes.
Yeah, so if I can, Mr. President?
Yeah.
So Jim, to your point, I think there actually is, to have that, whether it's fidelity of process or just getting it in writing right now. I think there's, I'm just looking over Julia's shoulder here at the site plan, and just taking off my mayor hat for a second, putting on planner hat. I mean, there is opportunity here to produce a plan that is slightly modified, that provides both ease of access to Route 13 in terms of outlet traffic, and not pushing it all to the light. Although, if our friends at State Highway are listening in, ignore me. And we can fight that battle with State Highway. You've done it, I've done it. But I think that's important, because the traffic concerns are real, and I understand that. But more to the point, I'm also looking at from a shoreline, forestation, light pollution, noise pollution, protection standpoint. What I would ask Mr. Tilghman is it possible in Resolution 2856 that requires or that adopts an annexation plan, where we're adopting an annexation plan, is it possible to add a clause where it says the city of Salisbury is required to adopt an annexation plan for the proposed area of annexation pursuant to local government article, blah, 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 and also add something about, and henceforth directs the administration to, or henceforth requires the developer to produce a forestation, shoreline protection, mitigation plan to be reviewed by the council, something like that? Can you put that in there?
I think you can put anything you want.
I really hesitate. If we're going to do this, then we're going to.
Well, these are things that I think would likely get brought up and sorted out at the next stage in the process. My point is only if the concern is about whether or not there's annexation in order to get there, then
I hear what you're saying.
at
I
least
don't
it's-
I don't disagree with you. My point is developing a resolution, sitting around a table without going back to work session and doing it how I consider to be a safer way of doing it.
Well, I guess the question for me would be, do you want the people who are on the other commission that will approve this? I mean, Mrs. Rue's comments are well taken. This is the beginning of a watershed that comes all the way through through most of Sussex County and is flowing right down into Johnson's Pond and then over into the river. So it's amazing to me that I have friends that go to build a house and there's so much that the state makes them do, and then this comes up and it's on this piece of water, and I'm surprised. I don't understand how you all aren't coming to us going, hey, can you get the state off our back a little bit, because God knows if we ever read anything down along a piece of water, it's incredibly convoluted but important. So I'm just not sure why it's not happening here. If it has, I apologize that I brought it up. So I would make a motion to take this back to work session. I'm not against the annexation, but I'd like to know some answers before I let it go forward. And being polite to these people is that saying we're going to go ahead and annex it and then having them go to step 3A when actually that should have been step 2A, I would appreciate it more if the plans were finalized before it gets here. This should be annexed in the city. It should be part of this particular designation. But I'm asked to vote on it later on, and I'd like to see what's going to go there and how it's going to go there before I vote to annex it. So I would make a motion to take this back to work session.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second to put it, the proper terminology would be to
Lay it on the table.
lay it on the table.
Should I lay this flat?
Now, okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
It would seem to me that the mayor, once he takes off that mayor's hat, has a lot of work to do on this property that I think he would enjoy doing. I would enjoy doing it, but it's not necessarily.
I'm not gonna be the one to do it. I'm just saying,
But
you
it
know,
will be
from one person's
it will be
perspective.
staff that sits in the room and says, to get this passed.
Though it would be unusual for them to do that during an annexation process. They would normally do it during the site development process.
Hence my uncomfortableness with the stages of that, but that changes a whole bunch of charter things and things like that. But
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to lay it on the table. Questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, I'll do a roll call vote for on this one. In favor of the table, or laying it on the table, please signify by saying aye. Ms. Jackson? Didn't hear you.
Did you ask me, say the
To
question
lay
again?
it, to lay it on the table, to
Roll
put it,
call.
Roll call? Okay, yeah.
yes.
Aye.
aye.
And chair votes nay. Okay. This will be tabled and then come back to the next work session.
So that would be the 28th?
28th. Yeah, not this, not
January
tonight.
20th.
We have to do our homework. We do have a work
draw
session
some
tonight, but we're not, okay. Well then, by default, resolution, well, I guess we have to do that formally too. Resolution, I'll call, we have to get the motion on the table first.
Yeah.
We have to get the motion up and called. I'll now entertain a motion to approve resolution number 2856?
So moved.
Mr. Boda, Mr. Ireton. Is there an amendment?
I would move to take resolution 2856 and lay it on the table, Mr. Council.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Ireton. Second,
Second.
Mr. Boda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Because it doesn't make any difference. Okay. Thank you for your participation. We'll take this up on the 28th. I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 2903.
So moved.
Mr. Boda,
This one's not here.
Mr. Ireton. Ms. Glantz.
Resolution number 2903, a resolution of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the owner of 500 Riverside Drive to allow the owner to use soil located at the city's wastewater treatment plant, whereas the city seeks to encourage development and redevelopment in the Central Business District, the Riverfront Development Area, and the Enterprise Zone, and whereas 500 Riverside Drive is located in these areas and is currently underdeveloped, and whereas the purpose of this agreement is to share resources to assist in the development of this parcel, and whereas this parcel requires a considerable amount of soil in order to construct any buildings, and whereas the city has excess stockpiled soil at the wastewater treatment plant, and whereas the city desires to enter into the attached memorandum of understanding to specify the requirements of the owner-developer to access the city's stockpiled soil.
Any questions or comments? Questions? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of resolution 2903, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution number 2904.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Rudisil, Ms. Jackson.
Resolution number 2904, a resolution of the Council of the City of Salisbury to adjust the southern property line of City Real Property Parcel 44, Tax Map 29, Libra 765, Folio 124, which is currently being used as the city shooting range, by exchanging certain sections of land with the adjacent property owner near Goddard Parkway.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of resolution 2904, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We now have a second public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2516 for the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boda, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Tilghman, good evening.
Good evening. This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury, Maryland pursuant to Chapter 17.228 of Title 17 zoning of the Salisbury Municipal Code and Section 4-203 of the Land Use Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland for the purpose of amending Section 17.76.020A to add hairdresser shop as a permitted use in the light industrial district. Whereas the ongoing application, administration, enforcement of Title 17 of the Salisbury Municipal Code demonstrates a need for periodic review, evaluation, amendments that will keep Title 17 current. And whereas the mayor and city council may amend Title 17 zoning of the Salisbury Municipal Code pursuant to the authority granted by the Maryland Code Land Use Article, Section 4-101 at SEEK, and in accordance with the specific provisions of 17.228, amendments and rezoning of Title 17 zoning. And whereas the mayor and city council requested that the Salisbury Planning Commission periodically review Title 17 in light of existing procedural practices and input from the city council and members of the public. And whereas Davis Simpson Holdings LLC submitted an application to amend the text of Chapter 17.76 Light Industrial District to add hairdresser shop as a permitted use in Section 17.76.020A. And whereas a public hearing on the proposed amendment was held by the Salisbury Planning and Zoning Commission in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 17.228 of Title 17 Zoning of Salisbury Municipal Code on October 18th, 2018. And whereas the Salisbury Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the proposed text amendment to Section 17.76.020A, now therefore be it enacted and ordained by the City of Salisbury, Maryland, that Title 17 Zoning of the Salisbury Code is hereby amended as follows. Amend Section 17.76.020A, permitted uses by adding the following item: hairdresser shop.
At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody that wishes to speak? No hairdressers in the audience. All right. We'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2516, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2515 for the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Jackson, Mr. Boda. Mr. Tilghman?
Okay, this is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving a budget amendment of the Grant Fund General Fund to appropriate funds from the United States Department of Homeland Security staffing for adequate fire and emergency response SAFER grants program for the hiring of additional firefighting personnel to be used by the fire department in the protection and delivery of emergency services to the citizens of the Salisbury Fire District. As a second reading, do you want me to go through this whole thing again or just discuss?
Just a summary. Does anyone have any questions or comments relative to this? No? If not, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2515 for the second reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2517 for the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Jackson, Mr. Ireton. Mr. Tilghman?
This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving an amendment of the FY 2019 General Fund budget to appropriate funding to the Business Development Marketing Fund. Whereas the city sold $1,244 worth of merchandise in the downtown Salisbury Visitor Center as of November 21st, 18, and whereas the city would like to return those funds to the downtown Visitor Center on a regular basis to make sure the Visitor Center has a healthy stock of merchandise, and whereas appropriations must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council, now therefore be it ordained by the city council of the city of Salisbury, the city's fiscal year 2019 general fund budget be and is hereby amended as follows. Increase in the marketing account by $1,244.44 and a decrease in the city merchandise by an equivalent amount.
Any questions from the council? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2517 for the second reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2518 for the first reading.
So moved. Seconded.
Mr. Boda, Mr. Rudisil. Mr. Tillman.
This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, for the purpose of accepting grant funds in the amount of $25,000, authorizing the mayor to enter into a subrecipient agreement with the Salisbury Arts and Entertainment District, Inc., and approving a budget amendment to the FY 2019 grant fund to appropriate funds for the 2019 National Folk Festival. Whereas the Department of Housing and Community Development has an operating assistance grant program, and whereas the purpose of the grant is to provide financial assistance in carrying out community development activities, and whereas the City of Salisbury has committed to hosting the 2018 through 2020 seasons of the National Folk Festival in order to celebrate our community's local heritage, culture, and art. And whereas the City of Salisbury submitted a grant application for funding to DHCD to support the 2019 National Folk Festival. And whereas DHCD has awarded the city funds in the amount of $25,000, and whereas all funds shall be used to support costs associated with the office expenses and event coordinators and activities associated with each coordinator's responsibilities related to the 2019 National Folk Festival. And whereas the City of Salisbury has designated the Salisbury Arts and Entertainment District as its financial agency for the 2018 through 2020 National Folk Festivals, and whereas the City of Salisbury is subgranting the award of $25,000 to the Salisbury Arts and Entertainment District, and whereas the City of Salisbury must enter into a subrecipient agreement with the Salisbury Arts and Entertainment District defining how these funds must be expended. And whereas Section 7-29 of the Salisbury City Charter forbids contracts requiring expenditure in excess of the amount appropriated for that general classification or expenditure, and forbids any office, department, or agency from expending funds not appropriated. And whereas the appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this grant must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council of the City of Salisbury. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salisbury that the Council of the City of Salisbury hereby authorizes Mayor Jacob R. Day to enter into a grant agreement with the Maryland Department of Planning for acceptance of these funds, and be it further ordered that the Council of the City of Salisbury hereby authorizes the mayor to negotiate and enter into a subrecipient agreement with the Salisbury Arts and Entertainment District for the purpose of expending those funds. Be it further ordained that the city's fiscal year 2019 grant fund budget is hereby amended as follows: increase in FYTIJ grant revenue account by $25,000, increase in the subrecipient SBY Arts and Entertainment District Inc. account by an equivalent amount.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2518, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2519 for the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boda, Ms. Jackson.
This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, granting a utility easement to Delmarva Power and Light Company across city-owned property, being portions of the alleyway located off the Baptist Street and running along the northerly side of the city parking garage. Whereas the City of Salisbury owns all that real property described in item 1 and item 2 as set forth in Schedule A of the utility easement agreement by and between the City of Salisbury and Delmarva Power and Light Company. Attached to this ordinance, and whereas the redevelopment of the property 132 East Main Street by First Move Properties LLC necessitates the burying of existing aerial electrical facilities located on the city-owned property, more particularly described in item 1 and item 2 as set forth in Schedule A of the attached utility easement, and whereas before commencing work to bury such existing aerial electric facilities, Delmarva Power and Light has requested the City of Salisbury to enter into a utility easement attached here to granting Delmarva Power the right to construct, operate, and maintain their infrastructure associated with the electric facilities that will be buried by Delmarva Power in connection with First Move's redevelopment of 132 East Main Street. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salisbury that the City of Salisbury allow Delmarva Power and Light Company to construct, operate, and maintain the electric facility infrastructure located on and within the real property described on Schedule A of the utility easement by and between Delmarva Power and Light Company and the City of Salisbury. Attached here too, and that the mayor is authorized to execute the attached utility easement for and on behalf of the city. And be it further ordained that each provision of this ordinance shall be deemed independent, that any section, paragraph, subsection, clause of this ordinance shall be adjudged invalid, unconstitutional, otherwise enforceable under the applicable laws, under the applicable state or federal law. Such adjudication shall apply only to the section, paragraph, subsection, clause, or provision adjudicated, and all other provisions of this ordinance shall remain valid and enforceable. The recitals set forth herein are incorporated into this section of this ordinance as is specifically set forth at length herein, and that upon final passage, this ordinance shall not be codified.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2519 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2520 for the first reading.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Rubenstill, Ms. Jackson.
This is an easy one. An ordinance to the City of Salisbury approving a
You
budget
think.
amendment. To read.
Okay. Hey, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
It's an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving a budget amendment of the FY 2019 Stormwater Fund to appropriate funds for a new street sweeper. Whereas the City of Salisbury has projected the amount to purchase a new street sweeper for FY 2019, and whereas the City of Salisbury projection indicates that an increase of $24,250 in FY 2019 appropriations is needed in the account, skipping the number, street sweeping vehicles in order to meet a change in the emissions requirements from the Tier 3 engine to the Tier 4 engine. And whereas the appropriations must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council of the City of Salisbury, now therefore be it ordained and enacted by the council of the City of Salisbury that the city's fiscal year 2019 storm water fund budget be amended as follows. Increase the current year surplus by $24,250 and increase the street sweeping vehicles account by an equivalent amount.
Any questions or comments?
Where's Mr. Stevenson?
I
I mean-
he could not be here tonight.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, just make sure he's here next time so he can fight for it.
He was nervous enough
And
during
all
the
the other
work
department
session.
heads are here, you know, the chief's here.
That's right, he was nervous
enough to come
He was nervous
They
during the
wouldn't let
work
him up with
session.
that book bag. That's what.
Unless he took everything out.
That's right. He's
All
down
right.
there now.
All right. Any questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2520, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2521 for the first reading.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Boda, Mr. Rudisil.
It is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving an amendment of the city's general capital project fund and the water sewer capital project fund to appropriate funds for the Honeywell Building Solutions energy savings projects. Whereas the city has determined that improvements to the HVAC system are required at the Salisbury Police Department, and whereas the city has determined that investment and conversion of the various buildings and street lighting to LED lighting will save the city energy costs over time, and whereas the city has reviewed a guaranteed energy savings performance contract proposal from Honeywell Building Solutions, is determined that entering into the agreement with them to deliver these solutions is beneficial to the city, and whereas the city's capital project budgets do not contain an appropriation sufficient to fund the award of a contract to Honeywell Building Solutions to fund the projects described in the attached Schedule B and Schedule C, and whereas Section 7-29 of the Salisbury City Charter forbids contracts requiring an expenditure in excess of the amount appropriated for that general classification or expenditure, and forbids any office, department, or agency from expending funds not appropriated. And whereas the appropriations necessary to execute the purpose of this contract must be made upon the recommendation of the mayor and approval of 4/5 of the council of the City of Salisbury, now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salisbury that the city's capital project budget be and is hereby amended so that the funds for the projects listed in Schedule B, Capital Fund Appropriations, and Schedule C, Water Sewer Capital Project Fund Appropriations, are hereby appropriated for capital projects. And those items are set forth in the attached schedules as described.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2521 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Ireton? Yes or no? Nay. That's what I thought. Okay. The chair votes aye. Votes 4-1. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2522 for the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Jackson, Mr. Boda.
Okay, this is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving an amendment of the FY 2019 general fund budget to adjust the Salisbury Fire Department's pay plan for the purpose of recruiting and retaining experienced officers and to be competitive with area agencies. Whereas the Salisbury Fire Department has a need to provide firefighting personnel with personal growth and career development, and whereas the career development program provides trained and experienced firefighting personnel with skill enhancement opportunities, and whereas this department desires to provide every employee with the opportunity to realize professional fulfillment through personal and professional growth, and whereas the Salisbury Fire Department needs to offer a competitive salary pay scale and career advancement program to retain experienced firefighting personnel who are committed to increasing the department's ability to maintain a high level of operational readiness, and whereas the adjustment of the fire department salary pay scale would result in better recruitment and better retention of experienced firefighting personnel, now therefore be it ordained by the City of Salisbury, Maryland, that the city's fiscal year 2019 adopted fire department pay scale be hereby amended as follows. And then we just have the various grades and steps listed there with, minimum step 1, mid step 13, and maximum step 30 identified. And I believe, if someone will correct me, that the underscored figures are the changes in that scale.
Yes. Right, Chief?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2522 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2523 for the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Ireton, Ms. Jackson.
This is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury to amend Chapter 8.11, the Fire Prevention Code, Sections 020 and 060 of the City of Salisbury Municipal Code by updating the reference to the State Fire Prevention Code, adding new permits that are required to be obtained from the fire marshal, and replacing the enforcement and assistance requirements in 8.11.060 with third-party inspection requirements. Whereas the ongoing application, administration, enforcement of the City of Salisbury Code demonstrates the need for periodic review, evaluation, and amendment, and whereas the City of Salisbury adopts the State Fire Prevention Code with local amendments, and whereas the City of Salisbury wishes to prohibit open burning other than cooking and recreational fires compliant with the provisions of the State Fire Prevention Code, and whereas the City of Salisbury desires to establish and list the specific permits required from the Fire Marshal's office, and whereas the City desires to collect all third-party inspection reports through a vendor system data collection company, now therefore be enacted and ordained by the City of Salisbury that Chapter 8.11 of the City of Salisbury Municipal Code is hereby amended as follows. And then we have the title there, 8.11 Fire Prevention Code, and then we have Section 8.11.010, Adoption of the Fire Prevention Code. The city adopts the State Fire Prevention Code as promulgated in the Annotated Code of Maryland. Public Safety Article, Section 6-206 and related COMAR provisions, and it's COMAR 29.06.01 Fire Prevention Code. And then under 8.11.020, amendments to the State Fire Prevention Code, subsection A. Actually, I mean, what I'm reading now is almost informational.
Yeah,
Because it's not, it doesn't reflect changes, so, but if you want me to, I'll skip down to line 82
Yes,
where the
please do.
changes occur. Okay.
Yep.
The subsection 5, it says, replace subsection 10.10.1 permits with 10.10.1 open burning prohibited. And it says, open burning other than cooking and recreational fires compliant with the provisions of this code is prohibited. And then paragraph 6, permits from the fire marshal are required for the following. Subsection A, installation, modification of fire alarm and detection systems. Subsection B, installation, modification of sprinkler or water spray systems. Subsection C, installation, modification of stand pipe systems. Subsection D, installation, modification of fire pumps. And subsection E, installation, modification of water storage tanks for fire protection. And then F, it also applies to installation, modification of gaseous and chemical extinguishing systems, or installation and modification of foam systems, installation and modification of smoke control systems, installation and modification of flammable and combustible liquid storage tanks, and installation and modification of emergency generators for the fire protection system. So those items now are going to require permits from the fire marshal. And then the next change that I see is under 8.11.060, taking the words enforcement and assistance out and substituting third-party inspections. That entire section as currently written is coming out, those two paragraphs identified. And then on line 138, they're adding that a report of all third-party inspections required by this code shall be submitted to the fire marshal's office for review. A third-party or vendor system data collection agency/company may be utilized for the collection of completed third-party inspection reports and associated collection filing fees. And that's it for the changes.
Any questions or comments? We are now up to code, up to the state code on everything.
That's right.
Okay. I now call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2523 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 2524 for the first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boda, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Tilghman.
Okay, this is an ordinance of the City of Salisbury approving an amendment of the city's water sewer capital project fund budget to reallocate bond funds previously allocated to the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project included in the fiscal year 2013 bond. Whereas ordinance number 2482, the FY19 budget ordinance, included Schedule B, which created appropriations to the water sewer capital project fund for the projects listed below, and those were pump station improvements, $555,000, park water treatment plant electrical gear, $245,000, replacement, and then that was referred to the gear, I believe. And then the next section was sewer infiltration and inflow remediation, $450,000. And whereas the funding for these projects was determined to be reallocation of the existing unused bond funds, and whereas previously the city has not identified which projects the funding would be reallocated from, now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Salisbury, Maryland, that the city's capital project budget be and is hereby amended as follows. And then the chart below shows subtractions and additions from where the revenues are being taken and where they're being moved to within the bond ordinance.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor of ordinance number 2524 for the first reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair votes aye. Mr. Ireton, I think we have help on the way.
That's going on twice.
All right, do we have anything else?
No public comment.
No public comments? Mr. Rudisil, you have an announcement for the good of the order?
For the good of the order, I'll have to say at this time, I've enjoyed the opportunity to work here on the city council, and I appreciate everyone here. The collegiality that I've experienced on this city council is unsurpassed, and this is an experience I'll never forget. But unfortunately, I'm being called to do public work elsewhere, and I will only be a part-time resident of Salisbury, and I won't be able to attend city council meetings, and as a result, I will have to resign my position effective January 31st. Thank everyone here for all of your support. I look forward to the next several weeks working together, and I'll miss being here so much. But, you know, I might drop in for a cameo every now and again. I look forward to being on the other side of the table.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rudisil, for your service. I think as a council, you've really contributed, and we're sort of in a lot of ways a conscience for us all on certain things that you felt very strongly about, and it's appreciated for sure. Just from a housekeeping point of view, I'd like to now talk a little bit, very briefly, about the process. The council, by charter, has to appoint someone for the open position within 4 weeks of the effective date of the resignation. Anyone, and this is for District 5. So the person who we are going to choose has to come from District 5. If there's anyone who is in District 5 and would be considering this, we would ask that you and it will be on a website. The process will be on the website. But just to give you a heads up, a letter of interest as well as a resume will have to be submitted, and then we will interview during those 4 weeks, as we did. That's how Mr. Rudisill got on the council. Then we will choose one of the applicants, and they will assume the role within no later than the 4th week. Okay? Since there's no other business.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Before you make that transition, may I just want to say that I remember Hardy being willing to serve in so many volunteer capacities before you stepped up and ran and put your name in the hat for the vacancy in council. And that kind of service is uncommon. And you think about the people who in this community are willing to get involved in an initiative, in an endeavor, and support the processes that need people and that exist. It's often the same faces over and over again. And to see somebody that was willing and ready to step up for their neighborhood, your old neighborhood previously,
Yes.
your new neighborhood too, and then to participate in a number of ways, including in volunteer service and now on the council. It's admirable, and we need more people like you involved. So you're going to be missed. You're going to be missed by all of us and by your city.
Yeah.
So make those cameos frequent.
All right. With that, I will close this meeting, and we are going to go into a work session immediately following. Does anybody need a bio break, like 5 minutes? You okay? Okay. So we are adjourned from the council meeting. Thank you very much. And Ms. Glant, you're up for the work session.
So before you is a resolution and MOU finalizing what we've already started using, the ice rink at the amphitheater. We had it open with some weather issues, but we went for 4 weekends, and that will be the goal every winter. Pohanka Automotive Group of Salisbury was generous to donate that to us so we could have skating all holiday season, and they are also willing to contribute. The rink was about $26,000 in total. They're willing to make a contribution of $100,000 total to go towards the amphitheater naming rights. So that is before you, and those naming rights will be in perpetuity.
Questions?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure if it's my uneasiness of the cars parked out in front of the Civic Center when that first started, but I guess we do have to get into the 20th century at least at some point, and then get into the 21st after that. Could I ask about the process upon which Pohanka was picked, decided? Because I've gotten questions from other car dealerships that say, well, was there an opportunity for us to all be a part of that? The other question, and it doesn't have to be now, and then the other question I had was, after the big amphitheater sign has gone up on Route 13, which is a noise thing, which ought to be considered in my drawing of the Leonard's Mill Pond.
Oh, God.
If we could put the same thing there along that particular to deal with it. But if more signage is coming along the highway, I was just worried for the entrance and exit into the hotel, which is already perilous at best. Anytime during the day, especially with those people who like to take a left-hand turn out of the parking lot of the hotel, which elicits a response from their city council member that it's best when the windows are up. So I was just wondering about the signage, and then just about the process, and if we're headed towards having a process where other companies are able to do this, then that answers the question.
Yeah, we put it out
Okay.
and talked to several companies. None came close to this level of support, and this kind of came out of left field.
Right.
Unsolicited. And, you know, I gather that there is a philanthropic effort by Pohanka that is, I don't want to say unparalleled in our community, but there seems to be a lot of community events that are getting their support. And I'm not trying to suggest that people start calling Pohanka and looking for their support, but they probably get that anyway. You know, I think a process of naming, we haven't run into this situation where we have had opportunity before. I certainly think it's something that we could consider creating something formal, but it's probably better left to the informal and rare circumstance. You know, unless we're creating another venue for music or events, you know, profit-generating events, it's probably best left informal. But I'm open to any suggestion. I don't have a strong opinion on it, one way or the other. As far as signage, the only addition that we've discussed at all, and we haven't discussed it with the sponsor, but it's something that we've been discussing when we considered the idea of naming, is something at the corner with the hotel. Something right at the corner of the entrance there, which would have the ability to do maybe a digital sign where you could have, you know, tonight, you know, movies on the Riverwalk, you know, featuring.
Marquis Lake.
Yeah, marquee, exactly, yeah. We've talked about that. The vision at the time was still a ground sign, like the Riverwalk Amphitheater ground sign, you know, low, relatively small, no higher than 3 or 4 feet with, you know, slightly wider than it is high. Something that would say like, you know, Riverwalk Amphitheater sponsored by Pohanka, and underneath of it a marquee, like the volunteer fire station one, the Fire Station 1 sign that the volunteers bought for the city, kind of like that. But you know, there's been no request for that, and there's been nothing driving that, so it doesn't have to happen. If that was a concern, it's something we can certainly be flexible about.
I don't know. I just put that in the bucket and let it twirl around in there for a couple seconds. And I thought, if a company is willing to give the city $100,000, then I think there needs to be a process, and not.
There's a saying about gift horses
What's they
there.
say in the West? We can get a little bureaucracy going here. Now, granted, I was approached by another car dealership, so that, you know, that's a very, very, very competitive thing out there. And everybody's looking for, you know, as we have different sign requirements in.
How about this?
We got a
We'll
parking garage
happily
we
take
can.
their $100,000 too. They can name something else. They can name something else.
Parking garage.
They are more than welcome to name a parking garage. The procurement center.
That's a good one. We're gonna have someone, no, not the,
Any contributions they
If I
want to
ever
make to
come
the
into
city.
some money, that's what I'll do.
you know what, my concern would be with doing something
How about a
formal,
community zone?
is you're gonna end up with a bidding war in some cases.
I think
And I'm not sure, if someone wants to do something.
Right.
I
If we
would-
get anything bigger than a skating rink, like say something on parking lot 10 ends up being like, you know,
if there was a
the Eastern
community
Shore
venue,
Bowl of
if there was a
some
community
sorts.
venue.
Yeah, if there was.
Yeah, I think
If
that's
it's
something we
big
can.
like that, I would think we would need to
Yeah,
have but I'm probably not big enough. Skating rink's probably not big enough for.
Well, most of, lot 10 will end up, you know, that's mostly private. But if we had a
Right.
public venue, a
Right.
naming opportunity, we could certainly talk about that. And talk about a process for selecting. This is kind of a, I don't want to say surprise, but one-off.
yeah, I'd have a rough time if someone came up to me and said, I wanna give you $100,000 just to put our name on the back of the parking garage.
Really?
Not 100,000, I'm just,
Would you do more?
I'm greedy. I'll take more.
Right. It's just for me, it's just a completely different, it's a step in a very great, different direction.
Thank God we are getting there.
Yeah.
People are now coming up and saying,
Yeah.
hey, listen, we want to put
You
our,
want to be a part of it.
we want to be a part of this whole thing. Hopefully more people will do that. We have consensus? Okay. Good. Nothing else on the agenda, right? So the work, we are going to end the work session, we're going to adjourn, and then we have another meeting.
Closed session?
No, the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
We have the agenda meeting. So some of you may go. Unless you're welcome to stay.
My picture.
Give me the picture.
It's on the back of my W-2.
Oh, and I put our name.
I wouldn't be any good
the
at my
National
job
Folk Festival
or my profession
out there.
if I didn't already have an image of
I
that
was
in my
asked
head,
by
of your drawing in my
committee
head.
members.
Oh, I thought you meant
So as far as
No, I don't
Same
have
thing,
that.
it's
For
just
the,
the same thing.
I don't have that in my
MNL
head. But
conference this year.
I have an image of that, your sketch in my head.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the folk festival to sell memorabilia.
I